Republicans are ramping up their unprecedented effort to suppress voter turnout ahead of the 2012 election. As we've reported, this year alone, we've seen voter ID bills introduced in 34 states, bills supposedly designed to reduce voter fraud, even though actual cases are few and far between, amounting to a tiny percentage of the total votes cast. In Ohio, Republicans passed a bill shrinking the window for early voting. It could have a huge effect in that state, where nearly 1 in 3 votes in 2008 were cast early. Ohio Democrats are trying to block that law, organizing petitions to have Ohio voters decide the issue before it goes into effect. It's an effort the Obama re-election campaign is getting involved in, too, hoping to repeat the success they had fighting the GOP anti-union law, delivering more than 1 million signatures to repeal that bill. But it's even worse in South Carolina, where Nikki Haley's voter ID law may leave 217,000 voters unable to cast ballots. With me now to discuss that story, Brett Bursey, Executive Director, South Carolina Progressives Network, a group that's been on the front lines fighting voter ID laws in that state, and Judith Browne Dianis, co-director of the Advancement Project, a civil rights organization focused on the issues of democracy and race. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you for having us, Reverend.
Today we learned that Governor Haley's promise to drive people without IDs to the DMV has resulted in a whopping 22 rides to help 217,000 people in that state that don't have ID. I mean, Brett, 22 people, when you are dealing with 217,000, could be exposed. I mean, does this does it do anything other than suppress votes?
Reverend, if you had watched the sausage being made here over the last 3 years, you would have absolutely no doubt that the whole thing was an ill-conceived and ill-planned and poorly implemented attempt to suppress the vote, to suppress minority votes, student votes, senior votes, rural votes, people who happen to be voting majority Democrat. The 7 counties with the largest number, double-digit numbers of voters that do not have ID are majority black counties. And today's effort of giving the rides to the polls was putting a Band-Aid on something that was a bad idea to begin with.
Now, the Advancement Project has been working on this and clearly one of the most respected civil rights groups. And I understand that more than, let me show you this full screen of what hundreds of voters that called in inquiring on voter ID laws, they often asked about birth certificates. Am I right?
That's right. Well, what has to happen here is that with regard to birth certificates, the reason we'd say this is a poll tax is because you have to obtain the underlying documents in order to get the actual voter ID. So people, you have to pay to vote, no matter which way you look at it. You can give me the free ID, but if I have to go and get a certified birth certificate, this is nothing more than a poll tax.
Now, thank you for that, Judith. Now, Brett, let me ask you this. One of the things that has really drove this home to me, an 85-year-old man, Larry Butler. Now, you know how many in the generations ahead of us, and even now, we had to fight to restore the Voting Rights Act. It was gained by those ahead of us. We fought it in our time. To listen to this 85-year-old man talk about what he had to go through to vote. Listen to this.
I'm Larry Butler, born in Calhoun County, South Carolina, and I was born in a home February the 23rd, 1926. I went to the motor vehicle department and they told me that I needed a birth certificate, which I did not have.
85 years old. Brett, tell us the story about Larry. They started with a birth certificate, and then what happened?
Reverend, if you met Mr. Butler, you would understand the cold hearted nature of this whole thing. Mr. Butler retired from Maryland, moved back to South Carolina several years ago, registered to vote, and voted in the last 2 elections. He has a Maryland driver's license that you can't trade for a South Carolina driver's license, nor can you vote in South Carolina if this new law passes with anything other than a South Carolina driver's license. And Mr. Butler didn't have a birth certificate, went through the steps at the health department to get a delayed birth certificate, got his college records, his high school records, medical records, military records, and took that to Vital Records, and they said, we want your elementary school records.
So he took all of those records, and they still wanted now his elementary school
in a black church in the 1930s, and it doesn't exist anymore. And we found later Mr. Butler's census records that showed him being born in 1930, or being 4 years old in 1930 in Calhoun County, living where he said he was, with who he said he was, and he was so excited, and he took that record from the census into the vital statistics, and he showed it to them, and they looked at it and they said, we're sorry, Mr. Butler, it says right here in the census record, your first name is Larry, and you spell it Larrie.
Wow.
You're going to have to go to family court, pay a $150 filing fee, and get your name changed. So that's the type of problems that we're running into over and over again, regardless of what kind of band-aids or rides the governor wants to give. There's going to be mass confusion and voter suppression.
I mean, it's almost like how many bubbles on a bar of soap we're back to. Go get your birth certificate, go back and get this. And then when you look at the percentages of those that have voter ID that qualify in the state, the discrimination, I mean, if we look at the breakdown, look at the numbers, it speaks for themselves. 25% African Americans, 8% white Americans. The disparity in voter ID in the state is clear. Now, when you compare that to the votes, if we look around the country, because people need to understand that this is not only a civil rights issue, it's a democracy issue.
That's right.
If you look at the amount of people that are disenfranchised, let me show you the screen in Ohio, where we talked about the early voting. In Ohio, early voting, 1.7 million early votes cast. President Obama won the state by 300,000 votes. If you knock out 1.7 million votes, you can clearly determine that he can lose the state just because people didn't have early voting, and you have a state with significant electoral college votes that is gone. This is a issue of democracy that I intend to fight, and we're going to keep on this, Judith.
That's right. They are shredding the fabric of our democracy by making sure that that every American can not participate. They're putting barriers in our way, and we've got to fight this. It isn't just the voter ID, but it is the wiping out of early voting opportunities in Ohio, taking away the Golden Week, where you could come and register and vote in the same week and the same day. They're taking that away because they know that people liked the convenience of it, that they turned out in numbers.
Right.
Why is it that we have decided that certain people should not participate in our democracy? It's because there are some people who want to undermine democracy, cut off the voices of the powerless.
Well, I thank you both. We're going to keep fighting. Judith, we certainly respect the work of the Advancement Project. And Judith, I respect the judgment of Brett for many reasons, but mainly because he told a member of my staff, Brett, tell Judith, who did you vote for president in 2004 in the Democratic primary?
Al Sharpton.
That's a man after my own heart. Thank you, both of you, and have a good night.